Me Bees. I'm your host, Dave Westcott, and I've got with me co-host Scott the Beekeeper. Scott, what's going on, brother?
Heyo. Hello, welcome everybody. As you can see, Dave and I are in two different locations today. Uh, I'm in our new studio, so I'm pretty excited about that. It's pretty cool, but doing
I'm in the
well.
home. I'm in the home office.
The home office. Yeah, it's
Yep.
just one of those days.
It's just one of those days where you want to catch some sun rays.
Some sun rays. It is a beautiful day out. It is beautiful. We have officially turned a corner to nice weather, and I love it.
Yeah, I honestly wish winter would never come.
It's funny if you know Dave's other work involves snow removal, and so it's a blessing and a curse.
I've never enjoyed a winter storm in my life.
Because it's always work.
I've never been like, oh man, it's snowing. I don't have to go into work today. Oh, this is such a wonderful thing. I'm going to have a fire and maybe have some hot cocoa and maybe watch one of my favorite movies that has to do with snow. Like,
Nope.
I've never like, hey, let's go sledding, or hey, let's go build a snowman.
Have you built a snowman with your kids?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
But it's always like when I'm dead tired in the middle of the night and we, make a snowman that's about waist high and he's kind of dilapidated, and it's not the full experience you're trying to rush through it. So
Yeah.
but listen, I'm not hating on the snow removal or whatever. It's all good. But listen, did you have a few bees die or what?
Did I have a few bees die? We have had losses. That's happened. Yeah.
I was just wondering because you're just wearing all black today. I was wondering if you're going to a funeral.
Ah, you're a funny guy. You're a funny guy. No, I was told it makes you look better. Thanks.
Oh, that black makes you look better?
That's right. It stands out with my skin tone.
Oh, that's nice. Does your wife tell you that when you come home from work?
No, she usually doesn't gas me up like that. No, she's
Oh,
like,
she doesn't gas you up like that?
no,
She's,
no.
does she gas you up at all?
Some days. Some days, yeah.
Does she say, baby, you're such a hard worker?
Not like that, no. No.
Baby, such a hard work, or let me give you a foot rub.
No, I don't get foot rubs, but to each their own. To each their own.
I love a foot rub.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Sounds great.
How does anybody not love a foot rub? If I was a bee, I'd want a wing rub.
I don't know if you could, maybe by other members of the hive, but I feel like you're going to rip it off, You got to be careful. Be careful with your bees if you're ever holding them, handling them. They're delicate. Be careful.
So the wife does not gas you up on a regular basis.
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes. Sometimes.
Did she tell you look good in black?
She has in the past, yes.
Does it encourage pollination?
It encourages me to wear black more often. That's what it encourages.
Does it get the pheromones rolling?
There are pheromones that roll, which, is good for today's topic. We're talking about pollination. We're talking about pollination services.
I love pollination services.
So when we say pollination services, what are we talking about, Dave? What does that mean?
To me, that means being a male gigolo. Just call me Starbuck.
Starbuck. All right, episode over, guys. Thanks for joining us today.
No, man, listen, pollination. You know what? Pollination is an amazing thing, and we like to joke around on the show. Teach me bees and other cool stuff is how we like to roll. But I think pollination is an amazing thing. Actually, do you know that one of the reasons that I actually started a beekeeping business, had the dream and the idea to start a beekeeping business, was because of pollination. all joking aside, I really believe that pollination is an important thing. And my my work career started in landscaping, and as the landscaping business grew, one of the things that I really got into installing for my clients was pollination gardens.
Mm,
And
I
so,
didn't know that.
you, oh man, listen, it was one of the best parts of the business. It's a lot of fun. But people would spend 60, $70,000 on a pollination garden. And you might think that that's
Wow.
a lot of money. It's really not when it comes to building the area, putting in the little retaining walls, to raise it up, putting in the steps, putting in flagstone paths, building
Hmm.
planters. And there's about 25 or 30, types of pollination plants that we would install in these gardens, and we would install them with benches and small water features, bubbling brooks.
That's cool.
One really nice for the
That's
bees
cool.
to be able to come in and take a drink, right?
Hmm.
It's an amazing thing. And then just an amazing haven for bees. And the cool thing about the pollination garden that I really loved was you could go into a client's pollination garden, and even from the onset, you could go sit on a bench, and you could really, one, the fragrance of a lot of the plants is nice. The relaxing environment, but also the bees, like the bees, and it's not just honeybees, but bumblebees and all sorts of things are in there, and just the calmness, just the tranquil peace, the water features doing their thing. And so I fell in love with pollination gardens. Okay, I really
Yeah.
did. And for those who want to save the bees, like the greatest thing they say that you can do is plant flowers, right? The one step past that is create a pollination garden, create a place for bees to go. And so along my bee journey, one of the things that really excited me and really brought this thing full circle was saying, now that I've had all of this experience and created so many pollination gardens and had so much success with it, like having bees that actually pollinate the pollination gardens was a really exciting thing for me. Like, to be honest, it really was like, man, it feels like a dream come true. And if here on our bee property, like how many trees did we plant?
About 50, roughly.
We planted about 50 trees because we're building a huge pollination garden. And the first step of that was to plant about 50 trees. And it's awesome because there's plum trees and there's apple trees and there's cherry trees, and it's really fun. And we just bought, how many blueberry plants? 400 blueberry plants,
Something like, yeah. Yeah.
something like that. And we have a beautiful raspberry garden. And so, just now having all of the bees and then having the pollination gardens on site, it really comes full circle. I know that we're talking about pollination contracts, but it was just a really fun start, and just really fun to build pollination gardens and being able to be a part of that design concept, and now really bring it full circle. And what I love that bees pollinate. And so we were talking to a beekeeper up in Canada. What was the name of their company?
It's the Honey Bee Center.
The Honeybee Center. Amazing, right? They have
Yeah.
3,000 of their own hives, and then about 3,000 beekeepers, or not 3,000 beekeepers, but they broker about 3,000 hives for other beekeepers. So they push about 6,000 hives out. And she listed a really cool statistic, and she said that when you pollinate, you increase plant growth by 8 to 10 times.
Hmm.
And I thought that was fantastic. I loved that statistic. So if you have a farm, if you have a garden, if you have a vegetable garden, if like, even if you have 6 beds that you're running, maybe some lettuce, carrots, I don't know, whatever you might be, some pumpkins, things that you might be, cooking up in the home garden, jalapenos, whatever, like having a beehive there is not a bad thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so pollination services, pollination in general is a really good thing. And we've shared before that approximately 1/3 of every bite you eat is directly related to pollination. And then up to 70% of all food is affected by pollination. So it's obviously super important. But pollination services, when we say like that, those two words together, that means taking hives, honeybee hives, to a farm, to a grower of a specific crop, whether it's a blueberry farm, maybe a raspberry farm, or sometimes it's blueberry, raspberry, strawberry all together. Um, a pumpkin patch. Pumpkins need pollination. The big one nationally in the United States is almond pollination in California. And that's kind of January, February, sometimes March. Kind of, there's like a 6-week-ish window in that time frame that pollination usually happens. And so pollination services is when we, the beekeepers, take our bees to X site for a month or 2 months or 3 months. And then we extract a fee for that. Typically, every crop varies a little bit in cost. Some are a lot more, some are a lot less. Almonds are going to be the most expensive one to go pollinate.
Why is that?
Well, I don't know fully, but I know the almonds are so dependent on pollination. Like they can't produce like hardly any almonds without pollination. They just do not get produced on a massive commercial level. So one, it's a need, whereas other crops, maybe blueberries, you're going to increase your crops by maybe 50%, but you could still have a blueberry farm without pollination, but you're going to greatly increase with. And so for almonds, though, almonds have grown. I don't know if you know this. They were in the early 2000s, kind of up through 2003, 2004, about $50 a hive. And then they saw an exponential growth 2005, 6, 7. And it's kind of continued. And it's all the way around $200 right now. And I think it maybe peaked at like $220 a few years back and it's come down a little bit. But that's because so many almond fields, almond farms were being planted because people saw the profitability of almonds. Like when you go to the grocery store, I can't think of a cheap bag of almonds. They're expensive. I mean, you get a lot. You definitely get a lot for what you buy. But if you spend $8 or $12, on a bag of almonds, it's very profitable. At the moment, I think there's.
You could have picked up like 12 Totino's pizzas.
You could have, and in my middle school days, I probably would have, but not these days. I'm trying to be a little healthier, But almonds. Yeah, go ahead.
You'd go for the almonds.
Almonds are way better. I love toasted almonds. Get a little salt on there. Toast them in the air fryer at 315 for 8 minutes. Great snack.
I love toasted almonds too. I love almonds. Almonds have broken 2 of my teeth.
Wow.
I've had 2 teeth crack.
That's a strong almond.
Or a weak tooth. I don't know. And I have like, but there's certain nuts out there that it's better to that they can do some damage for sure. But anyway, that's not what we're talking. We're not.
So crops that need pollination. Think of your berries: blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, apples, cherry, peach, pear, plum, those kind of things. And a lot of those are Washington State staples. So a lot of the farms in Western or Eastern Washington are going to have those. And then larger pumpkins, watermelons, cantaloupe, I said almonds, squash. And then obviously flowers like lavender, alfalfa, clover, sunflower. These are some of the more common pollination contracts at least in our general area. I've heard of like cranberries and currants and those kind of things also. So every time there's a farm that needs to increase its crop, it's going to do that, I guess maybe by buying more and planting more, but probably by bringing in beehives to help pollinate. So this is a side of the beekeeping business that you may or may not know a ton about. And so we wanted to kind of bring it up today of like, this is a really large portion of it. And Dave, I wonder if you know or you can share with our audience, what do you think is a bigger, uh, in your audience, or maybe pause, come up with an answer real quick, and then press play. But what makes more money annually for the beekeeper? Pollination services or honey sales? And
I
what
would have pollination services.
pollination services? That is correct. But what are beekeepers more known for?
Honey.
Honey. Now, honey is definitely a big seller still. And for those beekeepers who don't do pollination services, which not everyone does because it does take equipment, you do have to drive to places and unload and those kinds of things. Honey is still probably their biggest seller. But to give you just a perspective on honey sales, when people sell lots of honey, you go to your markets, local raw honey. We've talked about that. Some of our latest episodes have been on
Yep.
raw honey. Um, and you spend $10, $15, $20 on like a jar of raw honey, half pound, whatever. Um, you're helping the local beekeeper out, keep doing it. But actually, pollination services, at least of right now, make up a larger profit. So they're very important to the local beekeeper.
Yeah, they are. Talk a little bit about, you mentioned, I think, just the transportation of bees through the pollination process. That is like, how do you move bees? Do you just throw them in the back of the car, or do you?
Yeah, one by one, you pick them up in your hand, put them in a Ziploc baggie, and then you just kind of drop them. And no, I'm kidding. You don't do that. You don't do that.
I wonder if there's in a Ziploc baggie.
I don't know. So what you do is, and what's traditionally normal for what's called migratory beekeeping, is your hives are designed to be able to be moved. If you just put them on a stand in a backyard, that's tough to move. You can, but it's tough. So they're on a pallet, or a forklift can come in and pick them up. And you can do pallets of 2 or pallets of 4. Those are what I've seen. We do pallets of 4. And so you come in and you pick them up. And then we have a 22-ish foot trailer that we can load them on, set a pallet down, you can get next pallet, next pallet, next pallet. And you could stack them if you need to. And so that's how you load them. And so when it comes to pollination services, you definitely need a trailer. You need a truck that can haul. You need to be able to strap them down, put a bee net over them, so that you can take them, whether it's 30 miles away or it's 200 miles away, or maybe you're a Florida beekeeper coming all the way out to California for almonds, which they do. They do that. Like they'll go across the country for these pollination services. Especially almonds. Almonds is the big one.
Yeah, it's true. And, I mean, I've heard of beekeepers going from, Minnesota down to North Carolina.
Yep.
So there's a lot of travel that a beekeeper does.
There's kind of a triangle around the U.S. that I've and obviously we're not partaking in this really, but it's kind of the Dakotas, Montana, Minnesota area, because their springs are of really big spring blooms. Those all the way to California for almonds, and then down into the south, kind of that Florida, Alabama, the Carolina areas, and that makes like a triangle. It's kind of the beekeeping triangle, I guess, if you will, that a lot of the contracts are, and where a lot of the beekeepers travel. So those bees are moving often. And that's sometimes good, sometimes not good. So, but every time that you go to Thanksgiving and you got that cranberries, know that honeybees pollinated those cranberries. We probably wouldn't have them.
That's an amazing thing. So, how does one get into pollination contracts? What's the best tip for a beekeeper out there trying to spread their wings and get into pollination?
Yeah, so that can be a challenge, as something that we've learned. You have to find the right farm, the right grower for you. So determining how many hives you have available, what's your transportation abilities, And then you got to make contact. And so we've done cold calls, we've done emails, we've done messaging, we've visited in person. And that's manifested in a few different contracts for us. And none of it is like 100%. You're not going to shoot 100% on every shot that you take in life or in beekeeping contracts, right? And so, and some of them kind of come up last minute. We've had a few that have been worked out in advance. We've had a few that have been like kind of last minute, like within 2 weeks or
Like,
even
God, I
less.
need tomorrow.
Yeah, it's like, hey, can we bring bees out next week? And it's like, okay, yeah, let's figure that out. So I'm a planner myself. I try to plan out, but sometimes you roll with the punches, and you just have hives available waiting to go. And so it can be challenging. One thing that I've learned is a lot of places that do pollination services, a lot of farms, they like to keep the same beekeeper year after year. So kind of when you get your foot in the door, and assuming it goes well, like there's no disaster that happens or something like that, then it should be a reoccurring contract you can come back to year after year, working with the same people. So kind of getting your foot in the door is the hard part, right? And I'd say that's
What would,
probably about life. Getting your foot in the door sometimes kind of causes the problems, but
what would be an example of a disaster? What should a beekeeper be aware of?
um, floods, you can't really do much about that sometimes. But be aware where you're putting your hives and like what are the chances that it floods, kind of have that in the back of your mind. I know you can get insurance for a lot of beekeeping stuff, but I think floods is one that's really hard to get insurance on. Um, I've actually talked to a couple beekeepers about that. So be aware of that. If something were, there could be other disasters. I mean, a wildfire, I guess, could happen, and that's just
Does
gonna
that make it
suck.
are these the beekeeper's fault, or are these just disasters that happen that the beekeeper
These are
has to?
disasters that happen. You don't really have control over a lot of these things. Um, I know, like in this last season of almonds, there was some um, areas in the almond farms that got such heavy rain that it made it hard for the bees to actually come out and do their pollination. Like it was so intense, and some people may have even lost some hives over it because it rained so much. Um, you can't control those things, right? Those are just out of your control. Try to know ahead of time. Is it a possibility? You know, but everything else should be pretty much under your control. Varroa or other mites or insects, pests, diseases, those kinds of things, relatively in your control. Swarms, relatively in your control. Like to an extent, you can't do anything about any of those. Like sometimes things will happen that you couldn't have changed the trajectory of, but often you can.
How would you deal with a swarm that was happening at a pollination contract?
It's a great question. They're probably going to call me and hopefully at a decent hour. But you go out and you catch it, you put it in a box. Now, if you're maybe a Florida beekeeper and you brought your hives out to California and there's a swarm in California, you're not going to come out and catch that one swarm, right? That's not happening. So you should have a boots on the ground person that you're communicating with, typically a bee broker, and they may come do that for you. Or you might have such a large operation that you're like, it's fine. It's not worth the time or the trouble. Someone else can catch them. So, but typically, if it's a regionally based contract, you would want to go out and just catch the swarm. Put it in a box and then catch it in a cardboard box or a nuke box or something like that, and then put it into an actual hive, and then you can relocate it. So, but those can be challenging too.
Yeah, that can be challenging. That's really, really interesting. And how often do you go visit your hives in a pollination contract? How often are you doing beekeeping on site? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to get into your hives too much, like More than once a week is not great. You're disturbing the hives every time you inspect them. But then, every 2 weeks might be not quite enough. So, in that sweet spot of once a week to every 2 weeks, so, every 7 to 10 days, I would say, you need to go check on your hives. And distance will matter. If it's a 4 hour drive to get to your hives, you're probably not going to go quite every week. But if it's like an hour or less, you could definitely get out there a lot more frequently. And then also, if the grower, the farmer calls you with an issue or something, or then you got to get out there and deal with whatever is going on. I know that theft is an issue in some places, and so you need to be careful when placing your hives. So just giving you maybe a little cautionary advice: put a tracker in some of your hives or on your pallet, or
About that, I was going to ask you how you deal with that.
yeah, put a tracker on them so that you can just track their
How
location.
the people stealing bees, do you think that they're putting them in a plastic bag and trying to get them in one by one, or are they
they're
throwing them in the
they're
bag?
probably not going to be very successful with that. They're going to get stung a lot if they did that. So no, what I've heard, we've not experienced it ourselves, but what I've heard is that, and a lot of it is in the California area, especially related to almonds, because everybody knows it's such a big thing. That's where a lot of theft happens. But people will just come up and steal your hives. I heard I was talking with a beekeeper a couple months ago, and he heard that so in California they have bee yards where you can you're shipping your bees in, and then you can park your trailer, and there's a forklift, and maybe you have your own forklift or you rent one, and you can unload and load to another truck that's going to the farm, or something like that. So these bee yards that you can hold in. This guy unhooked. I can't remember if he unhooked his truck or not, but he went to get lunch. So he was gone 30 minutes, 40 minutes maybe. Came back. He had chained his forklift to the trailer and thinking that it wouldn't go anywhere. His forklift was gone. His entire trailer with all of his bees was gone. I'm pretty sure he took his truck. I don't think his truck was stolen. So theft can be
Wow.
pretty serious.
Wow.
Yeah, you got to be very
Wow.
careful when you're going to places you're unfamiliar with.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So be careful, be aware, and if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, I want to get into pollination services, that would be great. Feel free to reach out. We'd love to give you some tips or help you in any way we can. And if you're someone listening who's like, man, I think I could use pollination services. I would love to bring honeybees out to my farm or to my property where I'm growing pumpkins or squash or whatever. We would love to talk about that and bring our hives out to you. And well, we'll see where you're located. Hopefully regionally based. We're probably not driving out to Tennessee for anything right now, but yeah, if you're interested in pollination services, we'd love to talk more about it. We'd love to bring our bees out to your farm. Share this episode with someone that you know. Share it with a farmer or grower, or someone who's been looking for pollination services, because we'd love to talk about that and income. It's a win-win, right? Like, we obviously earn some income from that, but then we help the farm have much better crops, and we want the win-win relationship.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think the big thing to know is when you work with Honey for Hope, the big thing is the profit goes to charity.
Yeah.
That's why Honey for Hope, not only do we focus on working the environment and helping the environment and taking care of the environment through pollination, we also use the profit from the contracts to help amazing charities and noble causes that are making a difference in your local community, your regional community, your national community, and your international community. So Honey for Hope is really a business, with a purpose. And
Yep.
We are really, really focused and driven on making the world a better place. So check us out, honeyforhope.org. If you're looking for some pollination, if you're looking to take things to the next level, we would love to be the conduit that helps you do that. Any final thoughts for the audience here this morning, Mr. Scott?
I think pollination is great. and we need more of it. And so we know we'd love to bring our bees out to wherever your farm is at. So get in contact with us if you're interested. Feel free to ask us some more direct questions too. You can reach out to us online, honeyforhope.org. There's a connect spot you can click and get in touch with us if you want to know more. So thanks for listening.
Great job. And if anybody thinks that Scott looks great in black, I want you just to drop that into...
Put a fire emoji.
Scott looks great in black. I wonder what he looks like in white.
Very pale.
I'm just kidding. We could take that a lot of different ways. This was a fantastic show. I'm having a good time. I'm your host, Dave Westcott. Follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere where it's social. We're hanging out and having a good time. Next week, Thursday, is the day for Teach Me Bees. Log in. If you like this, give us a like, give us a share, join in, share it with your friends, share it with your family. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of good times. And listen, also, if you're interested in learning something about bees that we haven't shared yet, drop that in the comments too. And we're happy to,
we'd love to take suggestions. Yeah, for sure.
Happy to talk about things you're interested in. And listen, if you enjoy the show and you'd like to be a guest and you're a beekeeper or you love bees and you'd like to hop on and chat with us, also drop that in the chat too. We're always loving to have beekeeper guests. We're loving to hear your journey, what you've experienced, what you haven't. This beekeeping community is a really fun thing. And I hope you can see this, but one of my friends gave me a bee gnome. So you see this little gnome that's sitting on my desk.
That's cool.
And he says, "Be happy." All right, that's how we're going to go. Have a good day.